first and foremost, summative brief, due for 23 to 27 May 2022. Okay, so you still have quite a while to go with this. So number 1.1 says that you must listen to an hour of commercial radio, afternoon drive show, and put together a show clock. Include the following items and add anything else that you hear. So you need to include the news, traffic, sport, music sweep with an indication of number of songs per sweep, spots, imaging, and voice links. So I'm telling you, you need to listen to a commercial radio station. It could be an AC or a CHR, it doesn't matter. Afternoon drive show. So either between 3 and 6 or 4 and 7, right? So that's what you need to do. Now, I've had a lot of people send through show clocks and things to me to look at, and I could see that people got a little bit confused. We're going to talk about the show clock now, but just to quickly show you an example. So now you should see this show clock thing. Like I said, this isn't completed, okay? It shouldn't be open like this. I just started here to give you an indication of what it might look like. So at 4 o'clock, you're going to say it's 4. You're going to say the news was from 4 till 4 minutes past 4, and then sport from 4 minutes past till 6 minutes past, and then traffic from 6 minutes past until 7 minutes past. Then there was a song followed by a link, whatever the link did, a feature or something. Then there would have been, this is in the wrong place. Another song, followed by a short link, because the spot break won't happen without a link. So followed by a short link, then a spot break, music sweeper with 2 songs. Okay, and this thing is an imaging, okay, because in between 2 songs you will always have imaging, followed by a very short link, followed by the sport and the news headlines, followed by a song, etc. Okay, so then from there, you're going to use the same hour that you were listening to, and you're going to analyze every voice link. So a voice link is not the news, it's not the sport, it's not the traffic, it's not the weather. It's the actual content pieces. So whether it is a feature, a game, an interview, whether they were whatever they were doing, that's all you need to focus on there. Okay, so you will simply be telling me what each link was about. So 1.2, A, B, C, D, you're going to say link 1 was a link where they spoke to children and they asked kids a couple of questions to see what kids know. I don't know, something like that. And the second link might have been about them talking about the economy and about the war and what is going on there. And the third link might be a game where you had to send through voice notes about something. Okay, so that's what you will be doing here under the premise, the main point and premise. And then it asks you whether that link was a promise or a performance. So we will go through that, but a promise in essence is you promising that something is coming up of value to the listener, versus a performance where you are now performing that link where you said something is coming up, and it's imperative that that is an emotive link. Okay, so when it comes to this, is it a successful or a unsuccessful performance or promise? You're going to tell me things like, was it an emotive link if it was a performance link? Did they do what they promised to do? Okay, in a promise link, you're going to tell me, was the throw forward in such a way that it hooked you, that you were extremely interested? Could it get you to listen for longer, which is the aim of a promise link? Okay, so that's what you'll be doing there in this last part. So this whole thing counts 20 marks. So it's 5 marks per link. Okay, so 5 marks per content link. Then question 2.1 asks about the Mexican on the bicycle, which we're also going to look at now. Analyze one of the performance link in this hour. So again, you're going to use the same content. So this 1 hour that you're going to be listening to, you will be using for 1.1, 1.2, and 2.1. same hour. So then it says, did the link adhere to this Mexican on the bicycle rule? So obligations, 1 thought per link obligations. Why and how? So did they do everything they set out to do? Did they not? How did they do this? And then if you were the program manager or the producer of the show, how would you use this Mexican on the bicycle to help improve this performance link? So how can you make it better? So perhaps they didn't do their obligations, or perhaps they didn't stick to 1 thought per link. They spoke all over the place, whatever it was. Simply for 2 points, tell me how you would make it better or improve it rather. 2.2 speaks about a hook specifically. We're also going to look at a hook today. So the hook, or the first 7 seconds of the following talk topics. So a hook is the start of a link designed to entertain and engage. In this case, specifically an urban CHR audience. Urban CHR refers to YFM. So these links you need to, or these hooks rather, you need to write in such a way that it will work for a station like YFM. So the first topic there speaks about the royals and Oprah. It says weeks later, everyone is still talking about Oprah's interview with Meghan and Harry and the response from the royal family. You may be tired of talking about it, but listeners aren't. Here's a topic that'll hold up, that still holds up. Regardless of who you think the problem is in the royal family, everyone has an issue with someone in their extended family. Who is the problem in your family and why? So now you need to write a hook. A hook will be between 7 and 14 seconds where you are hooking me in here. It's not as easy as it sounds. It takes a little bit of time and prep. A hook can be quite tricky to get correct, okay? And you can see it counts 5 marks. So when we look at the mark breakdown, you'll see I'm telling you to incorporate one of the elements on, I think it's page 122 in your textbook. And then if you've incorporated it correctly, I'll give you another 2 marks. And then it's simply about how you've used the information that I've given you. So you can't simply talk about royals and Oprah. You need to link your family to royals and Oprah in such a way that it is a hook, okay? Then the second one says it's a relationship topic. So you're dating someone and they tell you they like you. But if they would have met your best friend first, they would have definitely wanted to go out with them instead. But they have no intention of leaving you for him or her. Would you end the relationship? So again, there's a lot you can do here, same premise. So also using one of the tricks on page 122, showing me that you understood it and using that as the start. Then C, lying about your job. A surprising number of people lie about what they do for a living, or at least they lie about what they do on their job. There are many reasons for it. They have to keep things secret, like if they work for the government or a private detective, or they are embarrassed about their job, so they make things up. They're bored with their job and want to be more interesting. They make up exciting things about their work to impress someone with whom they want to have a relationship. Is the bathroom the dirtiest room in your house? What lies do you tell about your work, job, career, or job history? Okay, so in essence, what you are seeing is that this would kind of be like the end more towards of the link, okay? And this would kind of be like I don't know, somewhere within that would be the topic. So now you need to write a hook for these. So a beginning part for all of these. Here again, that would be the end. So write a beginning part, same there. And then last one, who's going to miss the COVID days? With the world opening up a little and vaccines on the way, it's a sad time for a few of your listeners. Some are going to miss it. What will you miss about lockdown? What will you look back on and say, I miss the good old days when we were restricted? Who dreads going back to real work rather than working from home, and why? Okay, so that is where you will be writing a hook. Then 2.3 says, take the following talk topic and turn it into a personal, number 1, funny, number 2, engaging, number 3, story you will tell on air to an urban CHR listener. Once again, an example, YFM. Use the link planning sheet on page 130, table 4.1 for this. This counts 25%, okay? A quarter of this whole assessment is this, storytelling. So the question is, your topic is, what is the biggest age gap between you and someone you've dated? There's a mathematical equation that governs the lower boundary for the socially acceptable age of a potential dating partner. And that is half your age plus 7. So if you're 28, you can only date someone that is at least 21. Okay. I'm going to work through storytelling with you before we get into this too much. So we'll go through storytelling first, and I'll give you a week or two to look through everything, and then I'll go into this with more detail with you to break it down, because it doesn't really help I do it now, as we haven't covered the theory yet behind it. Then question 3 for 10 marks says, listen to an afternoon drive show of a commercial radio station you haven't really listened to before. Analyze the show as a P2, aka the secondary listener, using the table below. So you wouldn't know yet what front loading is, so don't stress about that. But did the show front load every link correctly? Yes or no? If yes, explain why. If no, explain why. Did the show work on getting you to know the characters of the show? Yes or no? Why? Did the show take callers or play voice notes from their listeners? Yes or no, and why? Did the show develop a story arc? Yes or no, and why? And did they tease effectively? Yes or no, and why? So that is your breakdown of your summative brief. So the first question is very easy. Like I said, simply a show clock, standard show clock. You will be listening to that hour. You just write down all the elements in that hour, okay? Promise or performance. So if you've laid out your main points coherently, so that's where I ask you simply, what is this link about? You get a mark. Analyzing the show with an understanding of what a promise or a performance is, you get a mark. And if you show me an understanding of what a successful promise or performance will look like with examples, it's another 3. So that's 5, 5, 5, 5, okay? Then question 2.1 says, show an understanding of what the Mexican on the bicycle represents for 1 mark. Shows a deep understanding of the principles explained by the Mexican on the bicycle for 1 mark. And then how to implement for 2 marks. 2.2 are those 4 hooks that you need to write for me. So if the hook shows that you understand the purpose of a strong hook, why we need to have a strong hook, you get 2 marks. If the hook relates to the topic and is entertaining, you get 1 mark. And if the hook uses one of the tricks and applications mentioned on page 122 of Next Level Radio, you get 2 marks. So that's your 5 marks, which adds up to 20 marks. Then 2.3 is your personal story that you need to create. So if you give me a story summary, it's 1 mark. If you explain the exact emotion about the topic and you have explained what emotion you will be trying to evoke, then you will get 4 marks. Then promise. If you have a promise, you get 5 marks if you've done it correctly. So does your promise present the characters and the obstacles for 2 marks? Is the promise emotive for 1 mark? Does the promise hook the listener in and keep them listening longer for 2 marks? So you will have a promise in 1 link, and then your next, well, in 1 section, and then in essence how it will work is your next actual story will start with your hook. So the hook shows that the student understands the purpose of a strong hook, so same as up here for 2 marks. The hook relates to the topic and is entertaining for 1 mark. And then using the tricks and applications mentioned on page 122 of Next Level Radio, 2 marks. Then you need to have a point of view. This is where that personal comes in, the word personal. So for you to have a point of view means immediately that you are personalizing this story. So either you can talk about a personal story of something that you've experienced, that you have heard about or seen, or something that, or the way that it happens in your head, or that you have a personal opinion about the story, then you will get 2 marks. Payoff, that's the resolution. So the crux of a story, if you give me a resolution, it's 1 mark. Is the payoff worth staying for? If it's entertaining and engaging, you'll get another 2 marks. So that's 3 marks. And then what else? This is where your layers, the dress up, will come in. You must explain to me what else can be done to make this content bigger. And how can you add more layers to the content? If you show creative ways to get the content to go viral, make the content shareable and turn this into a did you hear moment, you'll get 5 marks. So this is your personal story. And then lastly, with the P2 analysis, it's 1 mark for correctly identifying what was asked and 1 mark for explaining and showing a practical understanding of the concept. And that brings you to 10 marks. And then you get 10 again for your technical, 5 for plagiarism free, for using the Harvard method in text and in your reference list, and then 5 for just the normal punctuation, spelling, and paragraphs. Right. That is your brief. Any questions on that for now? I do know that we haven't covered a lot of it yet, which we are starting with now. Okay, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on clocks because in essence, all you need to know for now is, so this is an example of a clock. It's by no means the example that you will be using. Okay, the example that you will be using does not look like this, but it's just to show you what I'm expecting of you in terms of the breakdown. So you can't show me that this half was about music and that half was about content, because that's not what a show clock looks like. A show clock will tell you minute by minute what the breakdown is of that show. So no 2 clocks will ever be the same. Okay. Each hour of this clock is created specifically for a time of day or for a specific show. We create a show clock for a specific hour on the radio station. Clocks for primetime shows, so for Breakfast and Drive, will be full of commercials, aka spots, aka adverts, and breaks, which are links. Okay, so when you talk on air, and service elements like the traffic, the time, the weather, the news, the sport. While late night shows will mostly be filled with music because you are seen as more of a passive listener then. So what do you find within a radio clock? You will have music and spots and news and traffic and sports and station imaging, aka jingles, and presenter links. All of this is carefully planned out to suit each specific show. So it makes sense not to have traffic at 2 o'clock in the morning or 20 past 2 in the morning. Because what are they going to say? The roads are clear, go. Also, we don't mention the time as much that time of the morning, because if you are listening to me and I tell you the time the whole time, you're going to go, it's time for me to go to bed. So we don't say the time that much then either. So we create clocks to reflect what the listener is doing and might need at that time. So Breakfast and Drive are the shows that have the most links in them, so talk links. And they have less songs, so normally between 6 and 7 songs per hour. Because this is when listeners are in traffic and they need maximum entertainment. So we have our best presenters on at this time exactly for this reason. Okay, so we have our best presenters because we know we'll be doing more talking and less music during breakfast and drive time. So during breakfast and drive time, you tend to get 4 spot breaks, not just 3. So in the rest of the day, you will have 3 spot breaks. Breakfast and drive tends to have 4. Okay, so listen out for that when you're listening to your clock, because you're listening to a drive. So it might not necessarily have 4, depending on which station you're listening to, but if there are 4, you haven't missed it or misheard. So these shows need to offer value. They need to entertain the audience because they can get music on Spotify if they want. And we need to keep them listening because the high volume of people in traffic at those times means we can load up on ads. So we can sell more ads during this time and charge a lot more for it because we know a lot of people are listening and they're listening attentively. Okay, they're not doing backseat listening. They're not listening with one ear. They're attentively listening and engaging because they're sitting in traffic. So this is why we fill them with more ads and less music. So daytime shows, though, and early evening shows also have a lot of listeners, but we fill their clocks with more music because this time period is when people are more passive. So you're doing something else, you're working or you're cooking dinner or you're doing your homework or something else while doing it. So you're still hearing, but you're not listening as attentively as people who are stuck in traffic. So in that time, we have more music, and the content that we do have will be less interactive. You don't need to respond to it as much. So we still have a lot of ads because the audience is still quite big during the day. The only difference is that at 7 o'clock, we usually stop with news and traffic, with the exception of talk radio. On talk radio, news will be 24/7. Okay, there's news on the hour every hour. Commercial radio stops at 7. So nighttime and weekend radio, there will also be a lot more music and fewer ads and spots and short presenter breaks because we're mostly a companion at this time. So the clocks will are also more music with sporadic news and sports. And on weekends, we also have a lot of speciality shows like a South African music show or sports show or the Golden Oldies. And Saturday mornings, we normally reserve for the main show of the weekend, which will be the top 40 mostly, not the top 30. Normally from around 10 till 2. And normally the show just before 10 is also quite popular. So playing all of the station's best new music in one show, usually around 10 till 2, while listeners are out about doing their shopping, etc. Okay, so we don't have the same type of clocks during these hours. So radio clocks are extremely important because they are the framework of your show. They provide the formatics for you to know exactly what you should be doing when, at what time. Okay. So it lets us format our programming to the best of our abilities and to what the listener needs and wants with their daily routines. And radio isn't the only medium that uses clocks. Okay, TV also uses clocks. They schedule programming to suit the lives and the needs of viewers. There's a reason why the news is at 7 o'clock in the evenings. This is because we know this is probably when people will be eating dinner. It's after work, so it's not so early as to miss the news, but it's not too late that it will interfere with chores or homework or I don't know, putting kids to bed. Also, they don't usually schedule big shows on a Friday because a huge chunk of people don't spend their Fridays in front of a TV. Friday nights are normally when we're out doing other things, but not sitting in front of a TV. That's Sunday evenings. That's when we do that. You're seeing me and you don't see the slides. Have you guys not told me that you can't see the slides again? There should always be slides. I'm always showing slides. You've just been seeing me doing whatever. So this was the clock that I showed you earlier where I said a clock doesn't normally look like this, okay? It can be anything. This is just to show, to give an example of the times, okay, how it moves. All right. Yeah, the rest is just what I've been saying. So we don't schedule big shows on a Friday, like I've said, because a lot of people don't spend their Fridays in front of a TV. That's Sunday evenings when we'll do things like that. Saturdays are mostly for sport. And TV networks also don't normally air new or big shows in the summer. Why? Because in summer, people spend a lot of time outside, not in front of the TV. They do this in autumn or in winter when it gets darker early, like now, and people spend more time under blankets watching TV. That's when we'll do this. So in a way, radio does the same kind of thing. Okay, we do our best to add value to our listeners' lives. So what would you have in a clock? So this is an example of what you would put in for a breakfast show. Again, keep in mind you're doing an afternoon drive, not a breakfast, not completely the same. So this is the international standard. 8 o'clock will be news with sport headlines. 8:20 will be traffic with spots, aka ads. 8:30 will be sport followed by news headlines with ads. 8:40 will be traffic with ads. And then 2 minutes to 9, the next ads will start. So just before 8 o'clock, 2 minutes to 8, we also had ads playing. Okay. So these are the spots that will permanently be filled. You'll see when you listen to your afternoon drive show, same thing. There are spots that are, or places that are permanently filled with set things that'll happen, okay? Everything else gets put in between. So music and imaging and our talking links will come in between this, however you want, as long as it doesn't interfere with the main service element breaks on your show. So some things to remember. We do things in a very strict and standard way, no matter the station. When it comes to formatics, we're very, very strict. Why? Because listeners are creatures of habit. We don't break those habits, okay? Because we don't interfere and bring change around the whole time. People don't like change. So we stick to the habits. There's an order to do this in that is done globally, and you never stray from that. And there are certain rules. You will never play two songs back to back without a jingle to separate them. So back to back means playing song number 1 and then song number 2 directly after each other. There will always be a jingle to separate the two in between. So whether it's just the station ID or saying who you're listening to, whatever it is, there will be something. Okay, then you never speak directly after spots. Never, ever will you link after ads like we just played. Why? Because it might sound like you are then sponsoring those ads. Okay, so you can do the news or the sports, but you separate it from the spots with a jingle. So you'll have all your spots, you'll have a jingle, and then you'll start with whatever it is, okay, with your actual link. So you may talk, however, before spots. In fact, you have to. So you will link before ads, whether it's a live read or an actual link. You're going to do something, or whether you do a throw forward, you're going to talk before the spots. You also never talk after a jingle. Jingles are only for in between songs. It's like a break that separates these things. So we don't talk after that break. Okay. So you never speak after a jingle in this sense, not a jingle in the sense of a news jingle or a sport jingle, because then you will speak. Okay, we're talking about a jingle in the sense of the jingles that'll be in between two songs, like a station ID once again. Try not to link after the news, because listeners have just sat through 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes of talking. So if you have to, keep it very short and then get back to the music. Traffic and sport will also be followed by jingle and then music. So never go straight into sport or traffic or news directly after music. These links are good for doing a throw forward. So after the sport, you can do some sort of a throw forward, or you'll just have a jingle, okay, at least. But you can do a throw forward because this will help keep the listeners from tuning out, because you want them to stick around for what you have next, what's coming up next. So these are the 6 rules to keep in mind when you create a clock. Okay, so before we look at link formats, or formatics rather, I just quickly want to briefly go through this again with you, because I did see some people struggled with referencing. So when I say referencing, you need to do it 2 ways. You need to do in-text referencing, and you need to do your reference list. So in-text referencing is extremely easy. It consists mainly of the author's surname, the year of the publication in brackets, page number, that's it. Okay, so it's very straightforward. And then when you reference the textbook, you will reference 2 surnames. If it's more, you'll say et al., the date, the name, and the publisher. So very straightforward. So a link, what is a link? A link is the spoken time between when a microphone is switched on to when it is switched off, also called a voice break or a talk segment. A link in a podcast can be 5 minutes, or it can be 1 hour. Okay, it depends on how long the podcast is before it's been interrupted by either ads or music. So in talk radio, it can be a 10-minute talk segment. It can be a 15-minute talk segment between advertising. Or in music radio, it can be a 30-second talk break. Okay, so a link can be any length of time. There's no time limit to a link. So the most crucial part of any link is to first define the function of the link. Why are you doing that link? If a link has no value, listeners will quickly and without much thought move on to another piece of content on another station. Whether it's manually or mentally zoning out, we will move away, okay? So a link has to be emotive and solve the audience's needs. Every single link should have an emotiveness to it. So we have to compete for attention with all the other platforms available, okay, that provide valuable content. So we need to make sure that we are also giving the audience what they need. This is why a link should be broken up into 2 categories. That is, a link should either be a promise or a performance. So this is obviously where that section comes in with regards to your assignment. So let's look at these. A promise link is also called a tease or a throw forward. It promises the listener that what they are about to listen to is going to be of value to them and that they should stay tuned in for this content. The promise finds the emotive hook in the link or in the piece of content, or finds information about a song that is coming up, or sells that piece to the audience. Promises have to be planned. Similar to any other creative, entertaining link, you can't simply go on air and say whatever you think of. You have to plan these. So this is the promise, planning or showing you that, telling you that what is about to come up is something that you want to hear, is something that will be of value to you. So you have to stay tuned, not go anywhere. So your promise, your promise is trying to get you as a listener to listen for longer to the radio. Then a performance, on the other hand. This is the link that the promise was building up toward. You now have your listener's attention and have to make the priority, or the opportunity rather, worth the listener's while. So I promised you I will make it worth your while. Now I have to make it worth your while. What makes a performance worthwhile is that it is emotive. A performance will always be emotive, right? In other words, it makes the listener feel something and it engages with them on an emotional level. Good radio stations uses their qualitative research to help them make a more informed decision about what makes their listeners tick and what gets them to feel. If I were to try to come up with a piece of content right now that you will all be interested in, it's going to be very difficult because you don't have the same interests, you don't have the same hobbies or habits, things like that. So obviously there are certain universal subjects, things like relationships, money, a couple of that kind of stuff that we can talk about. But overall, I need to do more research into who you are as a listener to understand what will work and what won't. A good performance piece of content is one that can be both relevant and relatable. So you want something that is relevant, relatable, and emotive. Okay. Different emotions carry different weighting and fall into specific orders of importance. First and foremost, you need to try and make your listeners happy. Why? Funny and happy and humor is the biggest emotions that we have. We are very attracted to humor and to funny content. And we like to feel positive. We like to feel happy. Okay, so happy is the biggest emotion that you would want to try to feel as a listener. Next, we should try to create surprising moments or sadness. Sadness is a very big one. That's why there are so many specific features that work. And that's why there are so many movies that are drama related that make people cry, because I've heard this so many times. Sometimes you just want a good cry, or you just need a good cry. So you put on this sad movie. I don't get it, but it's a thing. Okay. Then other times there are emotions like disgust or fear. Okay, so other times we want a fuller range of emotions like disgust or fear. There's a reason why stories like Fear Factor did so well, okay, and was so popular, because people are intrigued by that kind of content. So people like following that type of content. Also fear, people like thrillers. They like that adrenaline rush. They like horrors, okay? For the same reason, it's part of that fuller emotional repertoire. The one emotion, however, we never, ever try to bring out of a listener on air is anger. As a radio presenter, I don't want to anger my audience. Why? Because anger brings out negative emotions. It's a very strong emotion, very important emotion, But directed towards me as the presenter means that you are, I'm bringing out negative emotions in you. Okay, that's not what we want. So what do? We rather use what's at our disposal. So we do want to get you angry from time to time, but not at us, at someone else. So rather allow other callers or characters to evoke that kind of negative emotion. So what we do is we can stage this, okay, theater of the mind. We can prep the first link, or the first caller rather, into a certain direction. And then when I end that call, or I jump in, or whatever it is, I look like the savior in this link. All right. So we don't personally, as the presenter, evoke anger. We get a character or a caller to do it for us. Okay, so when it comes to certain emotional responses, control of the situation is essential. Control is the one thing that you always have. A radio presenter never loses control of a situation of their show. Why would you? It's your show, right? So under no circumstances should you lose control. What does that mean? It means don't become emotional on air. By all means, you should have emotive content. You should be emotive, but you should not be emotional. So being emotive means I'm bringing out the emotions out of you. I'm evoking emotion out of you. But being emotional means I have lost control and I'm becoming irrational on air, which is a very negative reaction and one that we should never be doing on air. So certain emotional responses require that you stay in control of your situation at all times. Hi, Chantal. If you just joined, well, obviously you just joined. I'm in load shedding, hence why I look very dark. But yes, so we're just carrying on. I have been recording up until now, and we are still recording, so you will be able to look through that first section.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry for the late attendance. Load shedding, there was no network.
Believe me, I think we all understand that one at this point. Hello, I'm like, here's my face. Anyway, so conversations. Radio is an extremely personal medium with the presenter and the listener being involved in a one-on-one conversation, okay? Or there's this illusion that we have a one-on-one conversation, which is why I always say it, and I keep hammering on this, that you should only be speaking to one person on air. One person only. It should sound like you and that one person is in the same room, not like you're across the country from that person, okay? So we achieve this conversational medium by never referring to the listeners as a collective, but always talking directly to you as a listener. One of the implications of this illusion is that good presenters will see and maintain links as conversations. So it doesn't sound like I'm preaching to you or like I'm talking at you over your heads. It sounds like I'm talking to you, like I'm having a conversation with you like this. So the conversational style of radio presenting separates the great radio presenters from the mediocre ones. Those that can make their listeners feel like they are talking directly to them and not at them are usually the presenters that have the most success with the specific medium. So how would you structure a link? You'll have to use your imagination here, but in essence, this diagram should represent a man wearing a sombrero and riding a bicycle. So these two blue lines are seen as the wheels, and the orange middle section is seen as the sombrero, okay? So imagine you're looking at someone from the top, so a Mexican from the top wearing the sombrero on a bicycle. Yeah, so this thing has been around forever. I got trained in this when I was 16. And we've always used it. This is the way that we structure a link. So the reason we do this is so that we keep the listener's attention, okay, while still doing the obligations, the formatics. So it says, this is another question in your text, in your assessment, by the way. It says that a link, structuring of a link is comprised of an obligation, followed by one thought per link, followed by more obligations. So what is an obligation? An obligation are things like the show ID, or your name, or the name of the station ID, or the time, or the song that just played. Those are all obligations. One thought per link means it doesn't matter what your topic is. You must find an angle and stick to that angle, not go off and find another one and another one. Okay, so you only stick to one thought during your whole link. And then at the end, obligation fulfilled. Again, things like throwing forward to the song that's coming up, or giving the time, or something else. All right. So I believe, or I'm a firm, believer in not linking or not giving the song name, not throwing forward to the song name. So not saying the song name here at the end where it says obligation fulfilled, but rather giving the song name here where it says at the start of the link obligation. Why? Because if I was listening to the music and there was a song that I really, really liked, and I didn't have Shazam on my phone or whatever, and I wanted to know what the song's name is, I would stay listening until you linked to hear what the name of the song is. So now you link and you don't tell me the name of the song. How will I feel? Frustrated, upset, annoyed, okay? Negative emotions, negative emotional range, because I had an expectation versus reality. My expectation was not met. That's why I believe in back announcing a song, aka putting it here at the front and not front announcing. Okay, so if you back announce, you are assisting them with what it is that they wanted. So then, formatics, I'm not going to go into too much detail with you now. It's something that you can read within your textbook, but all it says is that you have a roadmap, so know where you are going from beginning to end. We're going to do this more in detail now when we speak about storytelling. Know how to edit phone calls. Every presenter should know certain basic production elements, and one of them is how to edit. Okay, a program like Adobe Audition, very easy to learn how to edit on, so that you can edit the phone calls before putting them on air. Understand the formatting for callers. So understand that a listener will always repeat themselves. If a listener, so understand that a caller will always say the same thing twice, so they will repeat themselves. So cut them off after they said it once. And always remember that if you can't remember something, if you need a break, don't freak out, don't panic, because sometimes it's good to have a pause or to have a silence on air, because it can work as grabbing your listener's attention, which is something that you want, right? So if you need a moment to gather your thoughts or something went on air, simply take a breather and try again, right? It's better than trying to make up content on the go and to freak out as you go along, because that's not going to help anyone. So once again, obligation, thought, obligation fulfilled. This brings us next. Now we have an understanding of what our link structure should look like and the formatics behind it. So we know what a clock looks like, and we know that within that clock we're going to have a lot of things, one of them being links, aka our content pieces. And we know that within these link or content pieces, it should be structured as follows, with obligations, sticking to one thought per link, and obligations fulfilled. Now, how do we prepare this content? How do we curate our content? The best way to do this is by using the 5 rules of storytelling, which is where we are now. Okay. So every great story can normally be broken up into 5 different parts. This counts the same as stories for like book stories or series or movies. Okay. Movies are quite good at this, or rather movie previews are very good at this. So we start with the hook, then the crumbs, then the dress up, then the payoff, then the blackout. So don't worry about these too much right now. We're going to go through them all. So the hook. The hook is our main focus. The hook is the most important part of the story, of the link. Why? Because it consists of the opening moment that will grab your attention and get them hooked on the content. It's also what you need to do for me for 20 marks for your assignment and also for another 5 marks in your storytelling. So you will be creating hooks. A presenter probably has around average 8 seconds to grab a listener's attention. Why? Because our attention spans keep shrinking. Interesting fact, the attention span of a goldfish is 9 seconds long. Our attention span is currently at 8 seconds average. It was 12 seconds a couple of years back, has gone down to 8 seconds now. In fact, there are some studies that say that 8 seconds is actually too long. So research from Spotify, which is quite interesting, has shown that roughly 24% of songs are skipped within 5 seconds, 29% after 10 seconds, 35% after 30 seconds, and 49% before the end of the song. So 49% of people do not listen to a song until the end of the song. And that is a song that you liked or that you chose to listen to. Okay? Our attention spans are really that short. Think about when you watch TV, how quickly do you pick up a phone and start doing other things? Or when I'm talking, how quickly do you do other things in between? Or your focus goes elsewhere and then it comes back. It's the way that we are. It's the way that humanity has shaped us. Our day-to-day lives have shaped us. Why? Because we are overloaded with information and we are time poor. We don't have enough time to take in all the information around us. So we multitask. We do multiple things at the same time. So we have shorter attention spans. So there was another study that was done by YouTube in 2015, where they released an article called The First 5 Seconds, Creating YouTube Ads That Break Through in a Skippable World. Their data suggests that at least 50% of their audience take between 3 to 5 seconds to decide if they will keep on watching a video or if they will continue on to the next video. If we use this research and we apply this to a radio link, then we have to hook them in our link in under 5 seconds. Sure. So how do you do that? How do you hook someone in less than 5 seconds? So think of this first 5 to 10 seconds as the first bite of a delicious meal. If it's something you really like, you're going to keep on eating. If it's something you dislike, you're going to stop eating right there. Okay. So we're going to look at a couple of tricks and applications now, which are the exact ones you need to use for your assessment. But before I go there, how you can do it is let's say I say something to you like, when is it appropriate to laugh at someone who fell down the stairs? One or two of you might now have giggled or laughed or at least done something or thought about it, because that's a way to hook someone, okay? And that was done in 2 seconds, 3 seconds. So there are easy ways. There are also certain words that immediately grab people's attention. We know that. So there are ways in doing this. So let's look at these 5. It's quite small here, but you can follow along in your textbook if you have light, unlike me, from page 120 to 129. I think this is on page 122, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, first and foremost, ask the listener something. So a question directed to a listener brings them into the conversation. So if this is done correctly, you can spark a sense of curiosity out of them. And the listener can become involved in the conversation almost immediately. Right. So there are examples of physically asking your listener something, but a hook and a question do not, however, have to be that literal. It can be a statement that could be interpreted as a question, a rhetorical question, or a statement that simply creates intrigue from you. Any way you use it, asking your listener a question in the first 5 to 10 seconds of a link gets the listener curious, intrigued, and engaged, which is exactly what we want. Second one there, set up conflict immediately. Every great story has conflict. Think about every story that you read growing up. Even kids' stories have conflict within them. So conflict is like the secret spice that makes a great link up. So that makes a link sound great. By immediately pointing to the conflict in the link, the listener is transported into the middle of a situation in which they are intrigued to see the outcome. So if I create a conflict situation immediately, you want to hear what it is that happens. Think about, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where someone was watching a movie and you joined them, let's say halfway through, and you sit and you start watching this thing, and there's some sort of a conflict scene going on. Something is happening on screen. To the point where you actually sit and watch the rest of the movie because you want to see how this played out, even though you missed the beginning section of this movie. Okay, conflict sequences are able to do that. So make a strong declaration or a statement or a proclamation or pronouncements, affirmations or assertions. As mentioned before, great radio is emotive. It brings out an emotional reaction out of me. It surprises me. It makes me curious. It makes me happy. It angers me, whatever it might be. Okay. A technique that helps for creating emotive radio is by making a bold or a strong statement that creates an emotional trigger for the audience. So something immediately. There are a lot of topics like that where you can immediately create a reaction like that. There was a good example, I think it was 2 years ago, maybe it was last year, I can't remember, of a guy who made an Instagram story, his personal Instagram account, personal story, okay, where he body shamed women. So where he said certain women are too fat to be wearing certain outfits. That thing went viral within hours. Okay, it was on his personal page or personal whatever Instagram story, but that it went viral across the country to the point where his business was hectically affected. He was removed from it. He closed down his Instagram account, Facebook account, everything. He made an apology video that he posted. People bashed that. He had to remove that. So very good example of how a strong statement can get a reaction, but a very bad statement to make, obviously. All right, so you'll notice that these statements will be opinion-based. So an opinion-based statement gives you something to react to and are always more powerful than a fact-based statement. But as much as you need to have strong opinions, please remember that you need to also be able to back yourself if someone takes you on about your strong opinion. Okay. You have to have a strong opinion. In fact, as radio presenters, if you have nothing to say, why are you there? So you need to have something to say, but just make sure you can back yourself. By triggering an emotional reaction, you immediately involve your listeners in the link. Okay. Immediately we are pulled in because we go, huh? What? Like, yeah, why? What did you say, etc. Then lastly, make them curious. People are all naturally inquisitive. Okay, we are all naturally inquisitive human beings. So once you trigger mystery and intrigue in the hook, you will be able to keep your listener interested in that link. A presenter must give a small part of the story away, not a lot, only enough to give you an idea of what will be coming up. So what I'm doing is I set up an expectation that a strong payoff is about to present itself and that it's going to be worth your while. So something that you would want to hear. Something like, what does this specific actor and John have in common? Okay, not a good example, but an example still. Even if the listener has no invested interest in the story or no natural interest in the characters or even in the topic, listeners will usually still stay on to hear the resolution because of their inquisitive nature. So whether we are interested overall in what you're talking about or not, if you've triggered our curiosity, we will listen. So now I'm going to play you a few examples of hooks. Okay, so please tell me if you don't hear this, but you should be able to. And listen closely because the hooks are at the beginnings.
I'm Bob Suter on the 947 Breakfast Club. Good morning, rest of the world. Hold on. You know when you were in school and you woke up and you were going on school tour or school outing and you're just so excited? That's how I woke up about the Great Potato Bake-Off.
Okay, I'm just quickly going to stop that. I'm going to play it for you again. But that was the hook. The hook was that you know when. That part, the know when you know when you were in school and you were so excited about something that you could hardly sleep. That is a hook. So that is her asking a question to drag you in. Okay. So if I do that again.
On the 947 Breakfast Club. Good morning. This is World. Hold on. You know when you were in school and you woke up and you were going on school tour or school outing and you're just so excited? That's how I woke up about the Great Potato Bake Off. About Potato Bake, but I know that it's been cooked by you, and it's you, and it's Cindy, and it's Alex. We are going to eat potato bake. Baby, you and I got nothing but potato bake. I am so excited for
Okay, and it goes on like that. And it continues like that, and it continues like that, okay? So that was the first example of a hook that I wanted to play for you. Okay, here's the next one.
You're in a friend's car. You think you're going somewhere, right? You can't get off because the car is moving.
Okay, I'm just quickly going to stop it there. Next one. What are they doing? You're in a friend's car. You can't go anywhere. So they are immediately putting you in that specific link. They're putting you in their shoes, right? So.
You're in a friend's car. You think you're going somewhere, right? You can't get off because the car is moving. Instead, hours later, you end up somewhere completely different. You have been Johnny Jacked. 7:23, Freeway and Natasha in the morning.
Okay, so I'm going to stop that there as well. So it's just the same thing. So what he did was he pulled you in right from the start, and you are now intrigued. You want to know what will be coming next. Or I was intrigued. I don't know how you feel, but I was intrigued, and I wanted to know what happened next. Next one.
Okay, picture this. You're at a lounge.
Okay, just quickly going to stop there again. Another hook. Picture this. And then I give you a scenario. That's another hook, okay?
Okay, picture this. You're at a lounge. Okay. Lights are dim. Erotic music fills the room. Right?
All right.
You're leaning up against the wall. He's standing at the bar. Your eyes meet. They never let go. You just had eyeballs.
Say what?
All right, so that was a good example of a very short emotive link. I mean, that's less than 30 seconds, okay? That was about 27 seconds along with them laughing and the start. So that was where they gave you a hook. Keep listening, and also it's emotive, okay? Obviously, it'll continue in the next link. Then.
What is the biggest fear that you have?
Okay, I'm going to stop there again. So here, they ask you a question, a universal question, because everyone has fears. So what is the biggest fear that you've ever had? Okay, it's another way to hook someone.
What is the biggest fear that you have in your life, besides dying?
And spiders and things like that for you. Snakes. Yeah, some people have snakes.
The number one fear. You know what it is? Public speaking.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that astonishing that more people are afraid of getting up in front of a group of people than they are of dying? Like, that's pretty severe. Well, you know what you think about, you have to do like wedding speeches, like best man speeches, maid of honor, like that works a lot of people up. But why do they always tell you to like picture people naked?
I don't know where that comes from.
Or in their underwear, yeah. More embarrassed and thinking about that now and
like
top of everything else.
Okay, so I'm going to stop that there again. So once again, that hook, very relatable and a good way to hook you in by asking you a question, a simple universal question that everyone has in mind or that everyone has in common. Like even for instance, something like, can you remember what you had for lunch last week, Wednesday afternoon? You'll think about it immediately. You might not be able to tell me, but you'll think about it. Last one.
One of the great things about having little kids is you can totally lie to them.
Okay, so that is a strong proclamation or a statement, or however you want to see it. But that's them making a statement saying that one of the best things about having small kids is that you can totally lie to them and get away with it.
One of the great things about having little kids is you can totally lie to them. But not for bad, only for good. Like, for instance, if we're out driving around in the car and we had said earlier in the week, hey, we're going to go to Chuck E. Cheese some night, but we're just both dog tired where we just want to be in bed, and we're heading home and they say, hey, I want to go to Chuck E. Cheese. We'll just say something like, oh, you didn't know Chuck E. Cheese burned down. Yeah.
All right, so that is another example of a hook. So do you get the idea of what a hook is?